The storm hammered the window frames, but the house remained unnervingly still. Arthur sat at the kitchen table, the air thick with the smell of damp wood. In front of him, a stack of overdue notices caught the dim light, their edges curled and yellowed. He ignored them. His attention remained fixed on the single, worn-out Bible. He traced the lines of an underlined verse with a shaking finger, the paper thin and brittle beneath his touch. The temperature in the room plummeted as the last of the heat bled away. Suddenly, the hum of the refrigerator died. The light overhead flickered once, then vanished, plunging the kitchen into absolute shadow. Arthur did not move for a long count of 10. He simply breathed into the dark, the sound ragged and shallow. He tapped the table twice, pushed the chair back, and stood up. The floorboards groaned under his weight. He shoved the bills aside, grabbed his heavy coat from the hook by the door, and stepped out. The threshold felt like the edge of a cliff. He pulled the door shut behind him, leaving the silence of the house for the roar of the rain. The rain hit his face like gravel. Arthur pulled his head down, but the wind whipped around his neck, biting into his skin. He stepped off the porch, and his boots immediately vanished into the thick, churning mud of the driveway. Each step required a deliberate, agonizing tug to break the suction. He reached the wooden gate, his knuckles white as he gripped the frozen latch and pushed it open into the dark. The path to the church rose steeply ahead, a jagged vein of slick stone and slicker clay. Halfway up, his right boot slid out from under him. He slammed into the ground, his palms scraping against wet gravel. He stayed there for a moment, chest heaving, rain drumming against his back. The mud clung to his knees, heavy and cold. He forced himself up, using the jagged roots of a tree to pull his weight forward. His breath came in ragged, wet gas that burned his throat. Every muscle in his legs screamed for him to stop, to lie down in the grass and surrender to the storm. He ignored it. He kept his eyes locked on the faint, dark silhouette of the church above, driving his feet into the slope until he finally reached the stone steps. Arthur pushed the heavy oak door. It groaned, yielding just enough for him to slip through. Inside, the roar of the rain dropped to a distant, muffled hum. The air was stagnant, smelling of old wax and cold stone. He stood in the entryway for a long moment, shivering as the dampness seeped deeper into his core. A single candle flickered near the altar, its light struggling against the vast, encroaching shadows of the nave. He walked forward, his wet boots clicking sharply against the floor, each step echoing like a gavel strike in the emptiness. He did not look for anyone. He knew he was alone. He reached the front pew and knelt, the wood hard and unyielding beneath his weight. He did not speak. He did not pray in words. He simply rested his forehead against his hands, letting the exhaustion finally overtake him. His fingers trembled as he reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled bills, the last of his resources, the final bridge between his survival and his collapse. He stood, walked to the collection box, and let the money fall. It made no sound as it hit the bottom. He stepped back, his palms open, waiting in the absolute silence of the room. He turned away from the altar, his boots making a soft, rhythmic sound against the stone. As he neared the back of the nave, a shape on the wooden bench caught his attention. It was a small, brown paper bundle, tucked away in the shadows. Arthur stopped. He scanned the empty rows, then stepped toward it. The package felt warm through the paper. He sat on the edge of the bench, his fingers working the knotted twine. The knot gave way with a sharp snap. He parted the paper. Inside lay 2 loaves of dense, dark bread, still holding the heat of an oven. Tucked between them was a slip of paper. He unfolded it. The ink was dark and deliberate. It read, "You are not forgotten." He held the note, his thumb tracing the jagged edge of the paper. The silence of the church changed. It was no longer heavy or hollow. He stood up, clutching the loaves against his chest. The smell of yeast and salt filled the space. He looked toward the door, his movements no longer sluggish, but sharp and purposeful. He had entered the building empty-handed and desperate, yet he was leaving with the weight of the world lifted from his shoulders. Arthur stepped out. The rain had ceased, leaving the air sharp and clean. High above, the clouds fractured, allowing a thin silver sliver of moonlight to illuminate the path down the hill. He kept the bread tucked under one arm, his stride firm against the slick mud. He moved with a rhythm that had been absent for weeks. Reaching his front door, he inserted the key, turned it, and stepped into the stillness of his home. The room was dark, but he did not hesitate. He set the loaves on the kitchen table and pulled a fresh candle from the drawer. He struck a match. The flame caught the wick, sputtering once before, blooming into a steady, golden glow that pushed the shadows back against the walls. The warmth radiated outward, touching the table and the worn wood of the floor. Arthur sat down. He did not look at the stack of notices still lying there. Instead, he pulled the Bible toward him, opening it to the marked verse. He began to read. His voice was low, steady, and audible in the quiet room. Outside, the world was dark, but inside, the light held firm.